Right. Well, everyone, thank you for being here. Very excited about this event today. You're here for how to change your careers over 40. I think we've got some great panelists on this today, so very excited about this. Before we kick off, just a couple meeting norms. Go ahead and feel free to use the chat for general questions. I'll keep my eye on that and make sure we save those for the end. This event is being recorded and transcribed, so we will share this with everyone after the event. Any resources that we have mentioned today, we'll make sure we follow up with via email. And if you'd like to get involved in GA, go ahead and check out ga.co/education. And then for those of you who aren't super familiar with General Assembly, we are a global education company. So we focus on helping people find the work that they love through education. So how we do that is through our immersive courses in software engineering, user experience design, data science, and then we have part-time courses in data analytics, digital marketing, product management, front-end design, many more. So check out our website. We also do some part-time classes, and then we do these lovely free events where we have industry experts talk about their career paths and what they're passionate about. But before we get into that, just wanted to go over a quick campaign that General Assembly is running right now. So we are doing a Learn, Give, Grow campaign, and it is for free workshops. Anybody who enrolls for those, General Assembly is donating $1 to the International Rescue Committee. So kind of our way of giving back for the holidays. And then with that, I'm gonna pass the ball over to you, Aurora.
Fantastic. Thank you, Hannah. So first of all, I really want to thank you and GA for hosting this event with me again. It's such a pleasure working with you. And I also want to invite everybody to check General Assembly's programs. Really fantastic stuff. If you are new to my work, my name is Aurora Meneghello, and I have a program for career changers who are not sure what they want to do next. So it's for people who know they want to do something different, but they're not sure what, and that's called Repurpose Your Purpose. I want to tell you a little bit about, can you move to the next slide, Hannah, please? And I want to tell you a little bit about Repurpose Your Purpose. Let's go to the next one as well. It started this series of events. I'm a little bit nostalgic here sharing the slide, but hopefully we'll get back to in-person events sometimes. It started 3 years ago. And really, from the beginning, I wanted to create a space where career changers could come together and really be with each other in this, what I call the in-between space, the space where you're exploring, but you haven't quite chosen. And I invited from the beginning 3 or 4 people who could share with us what it was really like for real to be in that space, to make this decision, to face fears and challenges of career change. And so since the beginning of the year, we moved these events online. And the one good thing about having them online is that we can have panelists from all over the country and all over the world. So that definitely expanded also the range of experiences that we share. I also show this, and I want to bring everybody to this in-person history of events, because sometimes when we meet online, we still feel quite isolated and we still feel like we're just watching. And I want to invite you to help me co-create this space. We have, I think at this point, over 100 people here. Isn't that amazing? 100 people that all chose to come here and support each other and explore this journey. So let's move to the next slide. And I want to invite you, if you are looking for more ways to connect it, to also next week I have another free event called Presence of Purpose. That's really about exploring. It's completely interactive, and it's about exploring closer connections and communication with each other. And then at the end of the month, I have a virtual retreat. It's in the next slide. So you have something every week, and you find it all on my website at repurposeyourpurpose.com. And this virtual retreat is particularly a treat because there's Kirsten Kaur will join me, and she is the most amazing sound bath practitioner that I know. So definitely check it out. All right, and I think I have one or two more slides there. Okay, this is all I do. If you want to check it out at repurposeyourpurpose.com, also feel free to send me an email at aurora@repurposeyourpurpose.com. And let's dive into a little bit of logistics before the minute of silence. So maybe we can stop the screen sharing for a second. And I want to tell you a little bit how today is going to go. Okay, so I'm going to be asking the questions to the panelists, and then there's going to be time for your questions. So during the panel discussion, please put your questions as they come to you in the chat, and Hannah, my co-host here from General Assembly, will be keeping an eye on the chat and then asking your questions or your best questions if there's too many at the end of my questions of the panel. We are recording this, and at the end of the panel, at the official end of this event, I'm going to invite those of you that want to stay with me to explore your own career change with each other in breakout rooms to stay for a not recorded portion. Okay, so that's completely optional, but if you feel like meeting other career changers and talking a little bit about yourself in privacy, then you can stay a little bit longer. And then before I really start, I want to thank all the people that make this possible. So first of all, General Assembly and Hannah and all the team behind the scene. Okay, I want to give a shout out to everybody that works tirelessly for weeks behind the scenes to make this happen. To the panelists who chose to join us here today. Thank you. It's very generous of them to share their story. To all of you who donated to keep these events free, thank you so much. Repurpose Your Purpose is a small business, and that's because of your contributions that we can do this over and over again throughout the years. And then last but not least, I want to thank everybody who registered and everybody who is here today. And so as I mentioned before, this space is co-created. And so I always start everything I do with a 1 minute of silence. And that's so that we can all leave whatever things are distracting us outside. I want to invite you for this 1 minute of silence to really be present with your heart to everybody here who's looking for something that fulfills them, and that you too have the answers for yourself inside of you. We can carry each other through the journey. So I'm going to start the minute of silence, and Hannah, if you don't mind putting that slide up with a minute of silence so nobody has to just stare at me in silence. I'm going to start it right now. Join me. All right. So there is something that my cat just showed up here. She never shows up at this. So I have to grab and show her for a second. So there is something that happens every time we have panel discussions events, which is we're used to come to these panel discussions and we're used to think that the panelists have the answers. We don't have the answers, they have the answers, right? I want to invite you to listen to the conversation today in a different way. I want to invite you to listen to this as a place of equality. We all have our own answers, and it's through the sharing of each other's experience that we can sometimes access that deepest wisdom that lies right inside of you. So I want to invite you to listen to each other and to speak, if you're one of the panelists, from that deepest place, this deepest source, so that we can really resonate and hear what is being called forth for each one of us. And I want to give a special welcome to Anthony Barcelo, because we had a little bit of an unpredicted change of plan this morning. Caio Simbula, that was supposed to join us, couldn't at the last minute. He's very bummed. And I'm super grateful to Anthony, who stepped in. And Anthony was at the very first How to Change Career panel discussion event 3 years ago, and also is in the VFX industry. So turned out perfect. Sometimes life goes like that. So thank you. All right, now that I've talked your ears off, let's start. I'm going to start by asking every panelist to please introduce yourself. Say your name so we can put a face to a voice and a name, and then just share what you did before and what you do now very quickly, and then we'll delve into your story. All right, so whoever wants to go first, go ahead. Don't make me call you.
Okay, well, I'll start. Hear me? Oh. No. Sorry, you go ahead.
Ladies first, you go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. I'm Kristen Nunez, and I used to do marketing and advertising. I went to film school and was in the media side, and then I transitioned to, of all things, farming and educating people about farming. So big switch. Thanks for having me.
Hello, Kevin McCormick.
Oh, we're just listening to the panelists. Hey, Kevin, thank you so much. We are listening to our panelists first. Okay, stay for a chance to share your story later. Okay, Anthony, go right ahead.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Anthony Barcelo. Thank you, Aurora, for having me again. I appreciate it. I come from a acting background and explored different careers along the way. I think I've changed careers probably 4 times in the last 35 years. And in the process of probably doing it again at 50. And I'm glad to be here. I hope that whatever I can share will help. And currently, as Aurora said, I work in the VFX industry, which is part of the post-production market segment of the entertainment industry. And I work typically as a senior artist, lead artist, sometimes as a supervisor, and as a creative. And, you know, it's been a really good journey, but I think, you know, there's something inside of me that's calling me to maybe turn the page and explore something new. So glad to be here.
Welcome.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Torgerson. Sorry, it's only going to get sunnier on this side. So pretty soon I'll be completely just a blob of sunshine over here. So I am the founder and CEO of Milk Stork. We are a breast milk shipping company. I always say the first breast milk shipping company to grace the face of the earth. Prior to that, I've had kind of a varied career. After college, I became a ski instructor and an archaeologist. Then somehow I landed at Cliff Bar, and I was a executive communications manager for several years, and then went on to I actually went to art school also, but then ended up having an idea and following it, and that's where Milk Stork started.
All right, I wasn't planning on the sub-theme of the arts, in and out of the arts, but it just happened. All right, so I am curious, you know, was there a moment where you knew that you wanted to do what you're doing now? Like, or did you just end up into it? Like, what happened?
Are you asking me? Sorry.
I'm asking. I always ask the whole panel, and whoever wants to jump in can jump in, one after the other.
Oh, I'll start. I didn't intend to switch careers. What happened for me is I was a working mom. I had my first child, and then I ended up having twins at 40, just over 40. And I had an idea, I had to take a business trip while I was breastfeeding my twins, and it presented a big problem for me. I was producing a gallon of milk every 2 days, and I was going to take a 4-day business trip. So that meant that I was going to have to pump 2 gallons of breast milk before I left, because it's a supply and demand relationship for those who aren't familiar. And then I was going to have to deal with 2 gallons of breast milk in a hotel mini fridge, and then taking it all back through TSA. It's a huge problem for moms who are breastfeeding that first year, who are working and need to travel or, pursue their ambitions. And so I just had this idea, if I could just get the milk home somehow, that would solve the problem. So that idea, just kind of chasing down that idea, turned into a business within 12 months. And I didn't really ever intend it to become a business, but it did. And then it kind of got on rails, and eventually the momentum led to a career change for me.
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
For me, it was a moment after giving birth as well, similar to Kate, where I wanted children for a long time, didn't have them. My husband and I were like, yeah, I think we love each other enough to stick together without children. And then bang, we get pregnant. And it was beautiful, and realized that I didn't want to leave my kids in daycare and be separated from them all day, and racked my brain about what I could do and stay home, but not be trapped in my house, and not be trapped in, I hate cubes, I hate office life. And I wanted to have a business in my home where I could be outside and enjoying a natural environment. And I thought, what about producing food? What about farming? What about being outside as a career that I could enjoy with my family together? And that's how it kind of came about.
For myself, I think, the saying that necessity is the mother of invention. I think there was a point for my current career, I was actually pursuing filmmaking and wanted to be a director and a producer, and I too had twins. My wife and I got married, and we had twins right away, and I had to shift gears. I had to sort of say to myself, well, I need to be able to provide for my family. And while I love these creative pursuits, sometimes they're not completely practical. And I wanted to still be involved in this industry that I love so much. So I tried to find a way that might make more sense for my new family situation. And post-production seemed to be that avenue. I could still be creative. I could still be in the entertainment industry. And it provided a more stable kind of income. And, with specialization and entrepreneurialism, I could kind of dictate and, sort of call my, sort of dictate my rates and my schedule and all that kind of stuff. And that's what I've basically been doing for about 20 years now. And, it's been a cool thing, and I don't regret it. I mean, I think there's still desires that I have to be other things. And it's really interesting because, I totally identify with my fellow panelists in different ways, because obviously I have twins, I have a large family, I have 5 children. I live in Portland and thought about maybe starting a farm, but maybe like a vineyard perhaps. So, this is a really cool sort of serendipitous kind of situation. And I almost would love to talk to both of you myself, maybe somewhere down the line.
But
I think it's interesting though, because I think when you're going through the transition of parenthood, it's such a huge transition.
Oh yeah.
And you're in kind of a ripe space to reevaluate everything.
Yep.
And it's like, it's a great time to harness. It's scary. I think, well, the stakes are higher for the change, obviously.
Yeah.
But your mental capacity for change is so high. Especially that first year after you could throw anything at me that first year of twins, and you know, it was a life upside down situation. So you're just ripe for change.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting in that respect. I would agree in that respect. After the twins were born, I think my income increased by about 30%, just out of sheer necessity. I had to push myself to be better at what I was doing and to really start driving, you know, the value that I was providing clients and studios and really just trying to show up, really be there 110% every single day. And, you know, I think that combined with the training that I had in my education, which really pushed me to kind of live that or create that work ethic that led to, I think, a lot of what I would call success. And so I totally identify with what you're saying as far as that transition that you're mentioning.
Will you share some names of big movies or programs that you worked on, Anthony?
Yeah, sure. I think some of the bigger movies I worked on, like Black Panther, Star Wars, Force Awakens, some of the Spider-Man franchises, like The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, Green Lantern. So a lot of superhero movies. And then some art house movies like Jojo Rabbit that came out last year or 2 years ago and won the Oscar for Taika Waititi. And, you know, TV wise, you know, not such big shows, kind of like Walking Dead, you know, and stuff like that. But no, well, Game of Thrones, I did a little thing on Game of Thrones. So, but yeah, it's, you know, it's been a very, you know, kind of space because I work in commercials, TV, film, and even a little bit in games and stuff. And last year I did my first animated film. I worked on Spies in Disguise with Will Smith and Tom Holland, which was a blast. It was so cool because it allowed me to take my skill set and kind of explore a different way of doing things. And it really allowed me to be very creative, which I, you know, love and sometimes don't always get to do because in what I do typically can be very technical in a sort of creative problem solving way. But when I can really be creative and start to really let those creative juices go, it's a lot of fun. So.
All right. So I have a question for all the panelists. Well, let me put it this way. So I work with career changers. So I hear a lot of stories from people that want to change careers. And of course, everybody bumps into their own challenges, right? So I would like to hear from you. What was one of your biggest challenges that you faced in making your transition? And how did you overcome that?
I can just say, you know, unlike Anthony, I was taking a pay cut with my career change. I had 3 kids, and I think that is probably a common challenge, is that to follow an idea or a passion or a dream, it does mean that there is going to be a change in your financial situation. And that was particularly challenging because I had 3 kids. I live in the Bay Area. We're a dual income family. I had to make the transition in a way that I was still doing my part in the family. And for me, what that meant is that, you know, I think a lot of, especially perhaps younger entrepreneurs who don't have families, you know, they can raise a big round of money. They're able to kind of ride that money out. We were bootstrapping, so we did not have investor money in the early years. I worked full time. I had 3 kids under the age of 3, and Milk Stork was starting to take off. So I was working nights after the kids went to bed until 1 or 2 in the morning. And I did that from August of 2015 until March of 2018. And that was my life. And I became a full-time employee of Milk Stork and left my job at Cliff Bar when I knew that I had to kind of time it when my oldest kid was going to go into public school, because that was going to reduce my childcare payment. I really had to do a lot of calculus to make it, and that Milk Store could pay me, even though we hadn't raised money. I was working for free for Milk Store for 2.5 years. While the company was taking off, I was still a volunteer essentially. And so it really was a transition of when the company was in a stable place for me to take a salary, albeit a much reduced salary from what I was making before, but enough that we had childcare costs that were going down. It's like hitting the right stride to make it work. And I think that's probably, financial security is probably one of the biggest hurdles of making that change.
Yeah. Related to that, for me, it was having to move. We lived in California as well, in Northern California. And, when you talk about farming, you're talking about millions of dollars in real estate investment, in infrastructure builds, that nobody was going to give me $17 million to buy a couple hundred acres of land. And so for us, it was like, where can we go? We wanted to stay in the States. Where can we live that we could partner with other, like-minded organizations and sort of leverage the assets of other bigger entities that could help us. And we ended up picking upstate New York because Cornell University liked what we were doing and wanted to support us. And so, we chopped a zero off of the price tag on a 17-acre property and began a farm in a much more doable financial outlay in the beginning. So again, like Kate, it was very finance oriented. I think the career switch was definitely like, I don't care about the money. I want to do something I'm passionate about. I want to follow my heart, and I stand by that 100%. But sometimes you have to make ends meet, and you have to be able to afford what you want to dive into. And so, you have to look at those finances sometimes.
So before I ask the same, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that. I definitely understand and relate to that, because prior to having the twins, I had started my own studio, completely self-financed. All the equipment purchases, the pipeline infrastructure, and all that kind of stuff. That was all out of pocket. Big old movie truck with equipment inside, and then post-production equipment in the office, and all that stuff. So I kind of understand that. And it was actually when the twins were born, and the financial crisis, and the writer's strike in 2007, that and buying a house, and just it all starts to add up. And then you start to realize, oh my God, what are we doing? And you're starting to run in the red. And you're trying to figure out, well, okay, how's this going to work? And so I still had my studio. I turned it virtual, and that became my side hustle. And I actually became a full-time sort of independent artist, gun for hire. And that's my freelance career has been sort of my bread and butter for the last 20 years. But those that sort of studio side hustle is usually what keeps me in the black. And so I totally get that, and it's that again, that necessity, the mother of invention. It's like you don't have a choice. You've got to rise or fall. And I think that's one of the biggest things about changing careers in general, no matter how prepared you are. And I tend to be very prepared. I do a lot of research. I do a lot of calculus. I do all that kind of planning and stuff. But no matter what, like parenthood, you're not really prepared until it happens. And from there, there's a lot of just decision making, and a lot of improvisation, and a lot of sometimes tough decision making. And
I think, I was just going to jump in. I think the side hustle approach is a real good one. So in my, when you're saying your freelance work was the bread and butter, for me, my paycheck, the work that my full-time job I used to call it my real job at Cliff Bar, and the Milk Store was my side hustle. And if you're doing a side hustle, there's a point in time when you can tell it's either going to take off or it's not. And a lot of that has to do with, with how much you're putting into it. I mean, but it also is just kind of the momentum that it finds. And I think, especially for parents, especially for people who have a spouse or a partner who's also along for this ride. And I think that that's another potential challenge if your partner is not on board with the career change, because it does represent a lifestyle change for them as well. But the side hustle is a nice safety net in deciding when to make the switch. You will know if the side hustle is taking off because you will realize that there's not enough hours in the day.
Yep. And your employer will realize that the side hustle is going to take off when they realize that they're not getting as much of you.
100% of you. Yeah. Or you're just feeling like, I remember I was driving into work one day, Milk Stork was cranking. I had my kids actually were going to childcare at Cliff Bar, which was a fantastic benefit that they offered. Another important thing that in my life at that time, 3 kids under the age of 3, childcare, and to have it on site.
Wow.
But I just remember thinking, how much longer can I do this commute? How much longer can I invest in the real job? And it was kind of like the writing on the wall was starting to present itself, that it was time to change. And I had run out of hours in the day.
Well, I had a question here all about, how did having a family and a relationship and so forth and children affect your career change? But I think you've answered that question. All of you. I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
Well, I would add.
Oh, go ahead, Krista.
Oh, I would just add that with regard to a partner, the communication has to be constant. I think sometimes I know myself where I feel like I've said what I want to do. We kind of agreed, and now I'm off and running, and forgetting to do those sort of check-ins where it's like, this is where I'm at, and this is where we're, what do you still think about this? Are you still in? And I think just if you have a partner and the life is changing and there's agreement, there has to be continuous conversation and agreement as you go for everybody to be happy.
I remember when I told my husband, the idea for Milk Stork happened. And then the next day is kind of like when I had the idea during the flight through TSA, I was mad. The next day I was more in the solution mind space. But my husband was holding one of the twins who was like 8 months old. I was holding the other. He was standing in a pile of Hot Wheels. And I was like, I have this idea that I want to do. And he's like, right now? His first reaction was probably not the reaction that you want when you're like fired up on an idea. So I would just say, give them a little bit of time. It might take, they might want to see some demonstrated momentum on your career change for them to get on board. Just appreciate that the change for you is also a change for them. And I agree with Krista, keep the lines of communication open, and you will find a champion, but it might take a little bit of time.
Yep.
So one thing that that's really amazing, right, is that every time a person changes career, there are so many fears that come up. And even like the little bit you're talking right now, like I can't imagine that there were so many moments that were either scary or super challenging and so forth. So I'm curious, did you feel the fear, and how did you handle it? What are your tricks and tips, to overcome fear?
Do the hard thing first, do the scary thing first has been my motto for over 10 years now. It's like every day, if I have a list of things I need to do the scary, hard, terrible thing first, and then the day just gets easier. And I think that goes for the fear factor too. It's like, if you have a mindset of like jumping in when you're scared to do something versus fleeing, the more likely you'll have the hours that you need of practice doing the thing that you really want to do, but that might be a little bit scary. And the more you do something, the less scared you are. So I think for me, it really is like running toward the danger versus running away. It sounds counterintuitive, but if you do it as a practice, it gets easier. And then fear is just a feeling. And it definitely signals, and you should like ignore it completely, but it signals something that, you know, might be a beautiful scenario for yourself. And it's not to be avoided if you can just get used to practicing and going toward it.
I would also say sometimes this is not counter to Krista, but I think finding ways to build momentum is really important. It kind of takes the big jumping off a cliff feeling away, because I think one of the first things that I did was I came up with a logo and I made a business card, and I carried the business card around, and it made it real, and it made me accountable to this thing, the side hustle, in a way. It wasn't just something that was in my head. It became like a talisman that I would carry around with me. And, you know, the first thing I did was not write some great, crazy business plan. The first thing I did was really simple things. And also, as a working mom with 3 kids under the age of 3 and a full-time job, I did the things that excited me. So I think doing the big scary things and getting off the plate, but also find momentum in the things that are really exciting to you. Because if you start trying to tackle all the things that business plans and legal in my case, there were so many unexciting parts of building this business. If I had started with those, I don't know that I would have kept going. So I think you have to kind of ride the thing that's magical to you and hold on to it, because it really is a source of momentum. And eventually, you know, that's kind of where paths start changing, is because of tiny steps moving in a different direction.
That's awesome. And, you know, I wanted to just sort of jump in and add my own thoughts on it, is that fear is just a feeling. You know, like any other feeling, you can either succumb to it or you can master it. And to me, I think one of the biggest things I learned along the way was mastering fear. Because fear can be a great motivator. It can also be an incredible source of energy and drive. It can feed your ambition if you know how to use it. I failed a couple of times in big ways because of fear early on in my life. And the greatest takeaway was that I didn't need to. I could have used that fear to actually find the success that I wanted. And so I've done that. I have used my fear, my angst, my apprehension, my doubt, you know, to drive me to success. And it's interesting because I was kind of looking over in the chat window and someone had asked, you know, did we tell our friends or our family or anybody of our plans, or did we just jump into it? You know, I think it's one of those type of things where you have to kind of feel it out in the moment and decide what you want to do. I mean, as far as that direct question, I would discuss with my wife. Sometimes I'd even discuss with like my mom, you know, but I would never really publicize it because I felt like that was just yet another layer of stress that you'd have to deal with. But I know people that would totally do that because then it firms up their commitment to the endeavor, kind of just like what Kate was saying, in a sense, you know, it drives you, that talisman kind of makes you feel committed to your endeavor and your pursuit. And so I think it really just depends on you as a person, how you deal with it. Fear is conquerable. Change is good. It's scary, but it's good. And, you know, I think that it's funny because when I was a single guy, you know, a lot of my guy friends would always ask me, you know, how I was, because I was kind of popular with the ladies and stuff. And I said, the secret to my success is simple. Just don't be afraid. Just go up and ask, say hi. Don't be afraid of the rejection.
There
is a what have you got to lose mentality that I think is really valuable. I was kind of opposite. I you know, at Cliff Bar, I was executive communications manager. And once Milkstark started, I started identifying myself as founder and CEO. Like when people ask you, what do you do? Was I going to answer executive communications manager, or was I going to answer founder and CEO of Milkstark? And there became a point when I started saying founder and CEO of Milk Stork, and it did feel like stepping out on a limb, totally. But it's exhilarating, and it was, once the switch had happened in my mind, it happened, you know, it happened everywhere else. It was the first domino to fall. So yeah, it felt like I was wearing someone else's clothes when I said it. When I negotiated my first deal, I was like, I am in a costume of a salesperson right now. And then I can be myself after the sales call.
That's awesome.
Imposter syndrome is real.
The what?
I said imposter syndrome is real.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it is.
It's okay.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is.
Who am I to be starting a cold chain logistics business?
Yeah.
So I want to like focus on a couple of things that you all shared and segue to my next question. And it's because I can really relate to these things. One is this idea of how do you interpret fear? Because I know when I was younger, I confused the fear for intuition a lot of the time. Like I would be scared of something. It's like, oh, I have a bad feeling about it. Therefore, it means I have to avoid it. Right. And I had to learn that actually, no, intuition is different. And I can learn how to know the difference, you know, and that fear doesn't mean that something is bad for you. Right.
Right.
The second thing is this idea of like, you can speak your reality into existence, which I think is also something very young. Like when we're young, we tend to think the adults have it figured out, or people that are 10, 20 years older, you know, they have it all figured out. And that somebody will tell us how to do things. And then the older we get and the more jobs we get, we realize, oh, wow, the boss doesn't really know either, right? They're all making it up in some ways. And so you start finding that, okay, I can speak things into existence. I can create them. So my question for you from this is, you know, do you feel it was different to change careers after 40? Do you feel like maybe you did it before and now when you did it later, it was different? Or maybe you feel like, oh, I could have never done that, you know, 10, 20 years earlier? Like, do you feel that age actually did make a difference?
Yeah, I actually want to attack this because like I said, I've changed careers several times over the years. And I feel like that experience lends a certain confidence that, again, you can face that fear, that apprehension, knowing that I have survived, I've succeeded, I have, you know, whatever, fill in the blank, right? And at the same time, I'm using the lessons that I've learned, the tools that I've created, the failures that I've had as, you know, weapons and shields in my you know, pursuit of this new thing. And so as like right now, I'm embarking on probably a new career change to be more of a content creator, but also, you know, this whole agriculture thing that I'm kind of thinking about, and, you know, diversifying into a bed and breakfast kind of business, and, you know, just all kinds of, because I moved my family from LA to Portland. And I mean, the best thing we could have ever done. And, you know, I think the smartest thing we could have ever done. And it's completely freed me. But that was a huge, you know, like, oh my God, I'm relocating a family of 7 to a city I've never really, you know, lived in, but was familiar with. And, you know, I all you can do is be as prepared as possible. And I think that's one of the things about fear, is that fear is really just a sense of anxiety, and anxiety is simply not knowing what to do, or feeling kind of out of control or not in control. And if you can at least control that sense, then you can use that to your advantage. And I definitely agree with you that fear and intuition are two completely different things. And intuition is a very, very powerful ally. I too believe that what you were saying about speaking into reality, manifestation, is a very real thing. I've given talks on that. I have friends in the industry that have done talks on that. And it's about setting things into motion and then creating that reality in your own mind that then translates into true reality.
And I'm going to stop you right there, because I feel like we can have a whole other conversation on that part, right? But I'm curious from Krista and Kate, did you feel like that changing your career after 40, that it was different because of, you know, your age or experience, whatever, for you, or no? It being just the same earlier.
I feel like when you're 40, you've learned a couple important things. One is that you've been in bad situations that you can get out of. Like, you can fall on your face. Like failure, I think you understand that failure isn't the end of the world.
Yeah.
So much. I think also you have experienced enough to know that no one has it all figured out. Everyone's just kind of, to your point, you know, you were saying when you're young, you think the older people have it all figured out. Like they plotted out this course, they knew exactly what they were doing. By the time you're 40, you know that everyone's winging it, and that you're just like everybody else. I just felt, and I think too, having had the kids, I was already winging it as a mom. No one gave me I was very comfortable with improvisation. Intuition was at an all-time high. I wasn't sleeping already. So I had grit in a way that I didn't have when I was 27. I had grit and that helped me.
I think for me, it was really realizing that the people I was trying to impress were no better than me, and why not try to impress myself? And being old enough to like go, I kind of know what I'm capable of, and like Kate and Anthony said, it's like I have a little bit under my belt, and why not? And I think for me also, being 40 gave me the perspective of not rearranging my priorities in a way that was overly focused on meeting my physical needs. Like I had enough time to kind of go, there's a spiritual aspect of myself that needs some attention. There's a mental, some mental health stuff I need to, it's not just about money and success, whatever that looks like. It's about like what makes me feel and be fulfilled, and what is the whole versus just myself, but the whole picture. I have these little people, I have this guy, like having perspective, I think really helped. And if I wasn't 40, I would have had a much more limited perspective on what was important.
So Krista, can you share a little bit about your farm, like what you do, the Learning Farm, and also like, because it's a lot for you to also participate here because you're quite remote, right? Tell us about it.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So I am here at a friend's home in Ithaca, New York, because I live on a farm with no internet access. So we are way off grid. We are so, we're living in a total opposition to anything that I ever valued as a young person. Like, why would I want to be away from it all again? But I love it. We really focus on helping families and children engage healthfully with outdoor spaces, and traditionally people who have been excluded or like urbanized in ways that they are not comfortable with and want to re-engage with the natural world. And we teach people how to grow fruits and vegetables and how to tend goats and chickens, and really just love being able to support other people in their living their best life. But yes, it's way out there, and so Ithaca is kind of a medium-sized town city thing. It has a couple of universities, and so it's not like way out in the boondocks, but we're about 10 minutes out, so we can access civilization if we want to. And all of you are invited to come visit. We have a few Airbnbs on the property, and it's quite lovely. But I'm happy. I feel good. I look out my kitchen window and I see a 150-year-old barn. I see grapevines, and I see all these things that I thought had very little meaning, but they've become much more meaningful when I see my kids running and picking blueberries off of bushes and their faces are purple at the end of the day, and everybody's happy. So at 47, it's like, this feels good. So I don't know what else I can tell you.
Was it your birthday?
It was my birthday yesterday.
Yeah, that's good. Happy
birthday. My business story, but my birthday story was my family cooked my favorite meals. We were snuggling and giggling and dancing, and then one of my goats, gets into the rhododendron plant. Like, my goats are like, they jump over fences, and so one gets into the rhododendron, and I'm like, oh, okay, we'll just put her back. And she had eaten what is toxic to goats and was vomiting. And so I call my assistant. I'm like, because she grew up on a farm in Kentucky, and I'm like, she's throwing up. She's like, goats don't throw up, Krista. They don't throw. I'm like, she's throwing up. And so lo and behold, goats throw up if they eat toxic plants. So half my birthday was sitting outside of a veterinary hospital. Cornell has a wonderful veterinary hospital, and I was sitting outside there crying and praying for my goat, who is fine. She was overnight there, and she is fine. But that is the beauty of doing what you love, is that there are terrible things and scary things all through. Even if you reach, you're like, oh, I'm happy here, and this is exactly what I want to be doing. There's still days where you're like, this is my birthday, and I don't want to be in a hospital right now.
Just in case anybody here is fantasizing about having a farm away from the internet. But no, thank you. I also want to ask Kate if you can explain a little bit more about Milk Stork, and then I have a last question for all the panelists before we switch to Q&A from the audience, okay? So real quick, what is Milk Stork all about?
So I kind of shared my experience of traveling while breastfeeding a lot. The thing to know is that breastfeeding is a supply and demand relationship. So you can't really create extra milk. You can't really turn off lactation when you're on a business trip. And a lot of women who have, if you're a sales manager, if you're somebody who's operationally essential that needs to travel, I mean, I think 2020 has changed a little bit of that, but salespeople will be back on the road, but they have to opt out of opportunities, because traveling with breast milk, there's no TSA is a crapshoot every single time you go through it with breast milk. You have to pump while you're gone. And what we are is basically an employee benefit. So over 700 companies offer Milk Stork as an employee benefit. It enables their sales forces to continue to travel, and moms ship their milk back home to their own babies. And we have a really neat technology, so moms can pack up their milk very easily. We have a cooler that is push button activated and doesn't have any electronics. So they can ship their refrigerated breast milk home, and they're not stockpiling it in their hotel. They don't have to pump before they leave. And it just kind of, it bridges the gap when mom's away and makes sure that her baby can continue to be fed, and that she doesn't have to give up breastfeeding, because that's the other thing, is a lot of women who do decide to continue to travel for work will wean their babies before maybe they wanted to.
Yeah, and one of the great things is that this is really, when we talk about solving a problem with a business, it's like, this is exactly how you created this. And I love story like this also, because it really shows that the more and more women get their voices and their power, the more we can solve problems that are invisible, like I wouldn't know about that, right? Like, unless you're a mother and you have to travel and all these kind of things, you wouldn't know. So it's fantastic. All right, so this is my last question before Q&A from the audience. And we'll start with Anthony. Do you feel you have a purpose?
Yeah. Short answer. Yeah.
What is your purpose?
Long answer.
Long
answer is I have a lot of purpose. My children are a huge part of my purpose. Trying to change the world however I can to benefit them is a big part of my purpose. And creating a legacy for them is a big part of my purpose. So yeah, my life is full of purpose.
Who wants to go next?
My purpose is to keep women in the workforce. I am frightened by the amount of women, and particularly moms, that have left the workforce in 2020. I think we are losing our seat at the table, and that is very troubling to me. So my purpose is to make sure that we don't just have women sitting at the table, but we have moms sitting at the table, because I think moms hold themselves accountable to futures beyond their own. My purpose is to have my kids see somebody to build, to make things, to put them out into the world, to take risks, and to embrace adventure.
Well said.
And I believe my purpose is primarily to reflect the glory and beauty of the Creator, which I think we all have as a common purpose, is to really embrace the beauty of who we are and use it to just bring more beauty to the world. And I think secondarily, my purpose is to help other people to be content and have their needs met in ways that are beautiful and inclusive of everyone.
Amen to that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Hannah, I want to pass it back to you. Do you have some questions from the audience?
We got a lot of questions. So I think what I'd like to start with, Anthony, this one was directed at you. How did you wield your fear or your fear and self-doubt that blocks my way from starting in the creative field as an adult?
I'm sorry, what was that again?
Somebody asked, kind of when you were telling your story about switching around, Anthony, how do you wield your fear and self-doubt that blocks my way of starting in the creative field as an adult?
Oh, okay. Well, I think like what I was saying before, you know, I look at fear as a great motivator. I did study a lot of like Tony Robbins earlier on in life, and Napoleon Hill and stuff like that. And, you know, they speak to the idea of disturbance. Like if you're living in a disturbed state, it creates action, and that action can be positive or negative. And I try to do the positive, you know, and try to not succumb to the fear, but use it as a tool and as an ally. I think that the fear thing again feeds into that sort of mother of invention idea, and that has definitely translated in my creative process, because a lot of times when you're under pressure, that's when you come up with some of your best work, especially creatively, because you have to start really drilling down and finding that clarity to deliver. Because a lot of times when you have a lot of time, you tend to just be meandering, and you tend to experiment way too much, and it becomes almost confusing because you've got too many choices. And I've seen that also not just in myself, but in the actual creative process in the entertainment industry. When you're forced, you know, it's funny, as a visual effects artist, this is, you know, we are sort of the facilitators as well as the, you know, the root of the problem. In that, you know, 20, 30, 40 years ago, when filmmakers were on set, they had to shoot what they storyboarded out, or they had to really stick to the script or whatever. And now today it's kind of like, well, let's just do whatever, because we can fix it in post. You know, the VFX guys can make it real, can do whatever we want them to do. And so that lack of commitment can create a lot of chaos and a lot of confusion. But when deadline's there and you have to make these decisions because you have to deliver, then all of a sudden now everything becomes very clear. What needs to be done, what can be done, and what should be done. And so I would liken it to that. I would say, you know, if you are experiencing fear or anxiety about what you want to accomplish, find that clarity so that you can actually make the decision and then just act on it. And if it's the wrong decision, it's the wrong decision. Take a step back and then make a new decision and keep doing it until it's the right decision. You know, that's just how life is. I mean, you can't necessarily foresee, and you can't always manifest. You have to react sometimes. I'm not typically a reactive person. I tend to be a proactive person, but I think that's unrealistic. I think, you know, that's a part of improvisation is trying to live in the moment and trying to, you know, sort of, it's like, you know,
I want to jump into maybe like suggest, because I know you and you started this conversation with you changed careers 4 times, right?
Yeah.
And there is something that's very powerful when you as a person, you like all of us, when you can change career once, when you once experience, I can actually set myself out to do something and achieve it, that it's like a muscle, then you know that you can do it again.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I always share, you know, with my clients. It's like, you cannot wait until you're confident. Like confidence is built by taking action. And as you take action, and then, you know, either you survived the failure because, okay, it didn't kill you, you know, it wasn't like as bad as you thought, or you succeed, you become more and more confident.
It's never as bad as you fear. It's never as bad as you fear. Yeah. It like never is. I think that's what being 40 teaches you, is that it's very rare that your like worst fears are like realized, or that like that life like turned out much worse than you feared it would turn out. I mean, maybe coronavirus in 2020, but for the most part, it's never as bad as you fear it's going to be.
Yeah, COVID-19 didn't happen because you changed careers.
I just wanted to add one thought. You know, one success usually is the sum of a few thousand failures.
Yeah.
You know, right. I mean, you see it day in, day out. Every, you know, people that are successful, quote unquote, successful, have failed and failed and failed and failed and failed until they finally put all the pieces together, or had opportunity and preparedness meet, or all of the above, and boom, success. You know, and success is not, it's transient. It comes and goes. You know, it's not just like, oh, I'm a success, so I'll be a success forever. No, you know, life changes. Yeah. You have to adapt.
So, yeah, I'm curious what other questions we have there from the audience.
I really like this one that we got in. How do you know if a hobby could be a legitimate business?
If people will buy it.
If it meets a need.
Yeah. I think if it's in the business space, charge for it. And I guarantee you're probably not charging enough, is what I always tell people. Because you feel, when I was like coming up with pricing, I was really like, I wasn't considering my own time and my own investment and like the costs associated like with that, the cost to my family. And you kind of lowball yourself, you know, like I will, okay, you know, because you're almost thankful that people are bought in on what you've created. But I think the better approach is understand the value that you're providing to people, be fair in your pricing, but also know that if your hobby is viable, it has the value to other people. It will be valued. If it's valuable to them, they will pay for it, and they will show you that it's valuable to them.
Yep.
Yes, and taxes. I saw. Yes, and taxes.
Okay, what's the next question?
In regards to pivoting, do you think that an entrepreneurial route is the best path forward, or trying to get positions working for a company?
Can I get Krista to answer this one? I'm curious.
I mean, for me, entrepreneurship all the way. I cannot work for anybody else. There are too many ideas, too many dreams in my head that nobody else gets. And until I do it, it's like, oh, that makes sense now, but nobody's going to get you but you sometimes. And you have to believe that what you have rolling around in your head is worth making happen. And you make a whole lot more money at least me, when you're the boss. When somebody else is in charge of your paycheck, sometimes people tend to undervalue what you're capable of. And that's not always the case with everybody, but it was the case with me, where I was performing way beyond what my income was what I was commanding as an income. And I changed that by starting 3 organizations, all of which are profitable. So it's a lot of work, but I would say start your own thing.
I think you will also find that there's no going back.
True.
Right? Like,
That is so true.
Yeah.
there's no going back. You're never going to sit at someone else's
you're
desk.
always an entrepreneur.
You're never going to sit at someone. You're never going back to someone else's desk.
That's right. And you should.
Well, yeah, what I always say is that it's a bit of a personality thing. And so here it's hard because all 4 of us like work for ourselves. So I think we all have a personality where we enjoy that most. So you should definitely ask that to somebody who really enjoys working as an employee and goes up the ranks that way. But you really have to know yourself, and you have to accept that one or the other has a big difference on your happiness level. Very personal. Okay, I know we have a ton of questions. What's another question here?
Yeah. To all the panelists, did you feel any pressure to have to measure up to any kind of competition in your new field when you first started with your pivot? If so, what steps did you take to address this?
I could answer that pretty easily. Yes, lots, because it's a very competitive field. And how did what was the second part of the question? How did you cope with it?
Steps to address it.
Be the best that you can be. Do the best work. Rise above everybody else. Separate yourself from anyone else. Create your own brand. Be the go-to person. If you position yourself that way, then there is no alternative. I mean, you are it, and that's where you're going to find success.
We didn't have competition because we really were a category creator. I think one of the for us, I think the bigger challenge was explaining the value of the service. But in fact, we found that was actually very easy because many of the people who are in HR are women who had children themselves, had faced the pain point and understood immediately the proposition. We have competition now, but we didn't have competition then.
Awesome, thank you.
And Krista, how about you? Do you want to add anything about competition or?
I would just say innovation is really the key. If you can poke holes in what might already be out there, that I think means there's a place for you. And understanding that sometimes your competitor can be your partner in some ways, where you can each leverage your assets and capabilities to reinvigorate the industry as a whole. I know that happened with me here. I have several farm partners that we cooperate extensively and have really re-energized the farm to table movement here in this particular area together. So competition is I think what you make of it.
Competition makes you better too. I mean,
yes,
it makes
absolutely.
you better. Yeah. It's really a source of innovation when you might be feeling stuck.
Yep.
Okay, what's our next question?
Yeah, we have a few that are like specifically related to folks' individual stories, but I think one that really is great is in your second chapter of life, how do you combat ageism?
I can speak. So my co-founder is actually my dad, and he was the first person when I had this idea that I called before I even called my husband or told my husband in the room when he was holding the baby and standing in the Hot Wheels. My dad is in his 70s, and we are a venture-backed company. Raising money as a woman is hard. Raising money with a co-founder who's in his 70s is very hard. It's, you know, the isms are always going to be there, but I don't know if I kind of and I'm old. 47 is most, you know, most startups are, you know, the founders are in their 20s or early 30s. I kind of pay it no mind. I can't be something that I'm not. I'm on my path. That doesn't mean that I don't know that it exists, but it's part of being an entrepreneur is when you hit a barrier, you got to find a way over, around, under, through, and you just chip away at it, and find people who are not ageist or sexist or racist or any of the other isms, because they're all there. They're going to be, whether you're an entrepreneur or working at someone else's desk, they're all always there. I don't know. That's not really, it's kind of just, I'm not going to let it define my path.
I think acknowledging that it exists is important, but like Kate said, I agree 100% that it's going to be there until it's not there. And you can't let it stop you. I think, you know, there's a million people that might look at me and say, no, she can't do it a million different ways, but I know what I'm capable of. I know my ideas are great. I know that they're important. And I think holding that in your mind, at the forefront of your mind, like, what I'm doing is important. And hey, you don't want to talk to me, you can talk to her. Or you don't talk to me, you can talk to him. Like, you know, like having a bunch of partners or, you know, cooperative entities that you can pull out of your back pocket if people don't want to look at you necessarily for whatever reason. You can find your way around things just by being creative.
I think too, one thing that you're going to have to get, I found I got comfortable with real quick, is everyone's going to tell you your idea is stupid, lousy, not going to work. You're going to get a lot of static, because there's many people who are not comfortable with entrepreneurism that are going to be afraid for you. Sometimes it's your family and they have the best intentions, but they want to prevent you from taking risks that they think are crazy. So I think use the static as an opportunity to just get more invested in your purpose, because you are going to have static. You're going to have more static than you are going to have people who are like, that's a great idea. You should start a cold chain breast milk shipping business. Those people are few and far between. So, but I do tend to listen to those folks more than the people who are like, breast milk, what do you know, like, so you're just going to have a lot of static.
I wanted to kind of play a little devil's advocate real quick, but also kind of speak to, since I do tend to work both as a service provider for, you know, a boss, depending on what I'm working on, or as an entrepreneur. Especially if you're starting a career or changing a career at this point in your life, ageism could be a real thing, only because you might not necessarily have the expertise to, at least initially, to combat that ageism. So you've got to prove or bypass the ageism by providing more value or showing that you can do something as well, if not better, than someone, you know, half your age. Because I mean, truthfully, in what I do from a bread and butter standpoint, I deal with this every day, because there are guys who are 20, 25 years old, half my age, who don't care about working 14 hours a day, who don't have kids or a wife to go home to, who can, you know, work for half of what I make, might not do even close to the job that I'll do or as efficiently, but there's so much room, so to speak, between those two things that the employers might be like, well, we can afford it. And what I found myself is actually picking up the pieces. They hire these junior guys, or they hire these guys that don't really know what they're doing because they're cheap and they can put in all these hours. And when it becomes crunch time and these guys cannot really deliver value, guess who gets the call? Me. right? But I have a third of the time to do the work that they had. Like I'll have a month to do the work that they had 3 months to do, you know? And so that's why I get paid the big bucks in relationship to them, because I have to come in and bring my expertise in and deliver. So in that respect, that can be a problem and that can be a hurdle. But I think if you face it head on, if you find sort of an innovative way to sell that value to someone, then you can overcome it. But yeah, it's going to be there. And, you know, I mean, I started this career at 30. And so, you know, I was already kind of behind the ball on that, because most of the guys I was starting with were in their 20s, about 10 years younger than me, some even straight out of high school. And even right now, I'm having to, within my segment, I have to still constantly innovate and reinvigorate my skill sets. I have to learn new software. I'm like learning new, I have to learn how to code. I've got to learn how to do this. I've got to learn how to do that, just so that, because all of these things are now being taught to these younger guys right out the door. And when I got started, that stuff didn't even exist. You know, I got into this industry when it was migrating from traditional analog media to digital media. And so I've been constantly having to upgrade my skill set through the last 20 years, and it doesn't stop. And so I think to answer that ageism question is that, you know, you have to find, if you're not going to be entrepreneurial, where I think ageism is less of an issue because you're your own boss, and you know, the only ageism thing might be what, I mean, in a way it could actually be an advantage, because someone might be willing to actually, a venture capitalist might be willing to give you the money because they know you've got some maturity and some you know, life experience to make sure that you follow through, as opposed to, you know, a young pup or something. But but in a sort of a career, like working for somebody else kind of environment, ageism can be a really tough thing.
I think you're right. I think it's value and quality, of the quality and value you bring to your service or product. I will jump in and say, there is ageism with venture capital. They do not like older founders. But the way you combat it in raising money and any of the other isms is the same thing that Anthony mentioned. It's traction on your idea. If you can demonstrate traction, then you have their attention and their interest.
I also want to point out that it's also a narrative, because apart from, you know, up until now, all of you were sharing stories how age actually made it much more likely for you to succeed, or gave you impetus, or, you know, all these great things, right? So I think the more and more we tell these stories and we get out there, the more we'll change the narrative as well. I want to be mindful.
Well, of course, it also helps to look fabulous all the time, right? You need to
all right, so yeah, go ahead, Kate, and then I want to.
There's one question that I see people very interested in, and that's energy. And I just want to address it because I still am a mom of 3. We're homeschooling people. We are COVIDing, and actually, I'm going to switch to. I have to switch off
headset. So sorry. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I am tired. I just want to say I am tired. I actually last night went to bed at 8 o'clock and woke up after my kids this morning. So it is a real thing. I do think it's harder as you get older. But the other thing that life has taught me is that work needs to adjust to the human container and not the other way around. And part of doing this whole endeavor is to find happiness and purpose in your life. And for me, that means not working till 2 a.m. every night. And if, you know, so I feel all of you out there who are tired in your 40s, especially this year. It's a very real thing. And for me, it's right sizing the work to your life.
Yeah. I think the benefit of being in my upper 40s, I don't feel ashamed of delegating to younger people who have more energy. And I think that's one of the benefits of entrepreneurship, is that you can structure the day and the tasks that that honor the physical needs and the sleep needs of everyone, and that you can be in charge of what's best in terms of what you need for rest. And I think rest is so important. And if you feel tired, go with it, get in bed, go to sleep. And I think that's the most important thing. Nothing takes precedence over your own physical health.
Oh yeah,
especially with regard to work.
I just wanted to add to that, because I recently just did a remote job for a company that I'd worked for previously in LA, but it was their San Francisco office, and we were up against our deadline. And, in entertainment, deadlines can be very trying, let's say. And at a certain point, I mean, this is where I actually leaned on my experience and my age to basically say to my producer, look, you know what, I'm not going to die for your project. So I'm done for the day. If you want to pick it back up in the morning, I'm happy to do it, or whatever, because I'd already put in like literally 20 hours. And I'm just like, dude, I'm done. I can't even think straight. And it wasn't the first time I've done that. I've had to do that throughout my career, because people just don't, generally speaking, clients just don't respect. They just don't respect that about the reality of your life, that you have 5 kids, or that you have, things that you have to deal with, and you still need to sleep, and you still need to eat, and you still need to do all these things. And you just have to, have the confidence to be able to push back. And I think by pushing back, you actually command respect. I've always felt that if you do it right, you can command the respect and make them understand that they are pushing the line, and that you are now pushing back. And if they want it to be done, right, and they need you to do it, then they need to play by your rules too. It's not just a one-way thing.
Anthony, somebody here in the audience wants to know if the clients came back to work with you after you said no.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right, I'm going to start wrapping it up here, because I want to thank all the panelists, and I know I'm taking, we're taking your time, and I want to ask you 2 questions in one. Really quick to wrap this up. Do you have any last words of encouragement for anyone listening to this today, or maybe watching the recording later, who wants to do something else professionally? They want to change careers, start their business, but they're afraid to take the leap. So what are your last words of advice really quickly? And then if anybody wants to get in touch with you, how can they get in touch with you?
2 words. Do it. Do it. I think sometimes fear is a little thing in your brain that was built to keep your physical body safe. Nothing more, nothing less. And what you're doing, if you think it's important, if you plotted it and you've done your due diligence on what will work, and you really feel confidence given your planning and advice, and if it's solid, take the leap. That's my advice. And I would love to I'll give everybody my email address. And I would love to keep in touch. Thank you so much. This was a huge honor. Kate and Anthony, I really want to get to know both of you better. I'm so impressed.
Absolutely.
And so inspired. Thank you.
Likewise. I was just going to add that, to me, preparation is the fear killer. If you do your homework, you run the numbers, you work it out in your head like a chess match, you look 10 moves ahead, and you just be as prepared as possible, fear won't matter, because you'll already know where you're going, and you'll be prepared to react if you need to, and improvise when you need to. I think that fear is weaponized in our world in general, and it feeds so many things that stand in the way of people creating. And that's what this is all about, is being creative and being a creator. As you said earlier, Krista, it's sort of paying honor to the creator. It's the same. I mean, that's what we're here. We're all here to create something. you know, and so being prepared, doing your homework, running the numbers, you know, it shouldn't stand in your way. Fear shouldn't stand in your way.
I would just say, if you know what it is, like, to echo Krista, just go for it. Baby steps, side hustle, just one foot in front of the other, and just keep going and see if the momentum catches, both for you and the world. I saw a lot of folks saying that they want to have a career change, but they don't know what it is yet. So I almost feel like that's you're in the pre-stage. Mm-hmm. And I think I had that as well, where I knew it was time for a change, but I didn't know what it was until I had this business trip. So I think you're in a ripe stage, even if you don't know what it is yet. And so my advice would just be to expose yourself to the things that interest you as much as you possibly can. You know, if it's art, music, if it's entrepreneurial, just start putting those things in front of you, start investing some time in them, and let them kind of blossom, because eventually you will find the thing. You're kind of in the right state. It's just a matter of finding the thing, and let it grow, because you will find it. Just don't, you know, you can't force it sometimes.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Krista, Anthony, and Kate, and Hannah for co-hosting here with me from General Assembly. Thank you so much. This has been such a rich conversation. I could really tell people were listening and staying with us and really engaged, and we could go on forever. So I want to conclude, unless Hannah, you want to say anything before we conclude the official portion of the panel.
I just wanted to say thank you, panelists. This was incredible. Thank you, attendees, for being here. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. It was an honor.
Thank you guys.
So we're going to close the official panel by stopping the recording. And if you